What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday live stream. Today we have on Mark. How the heck are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm on time. It's a miracle.
Just in the nick of time. Impeccable timing, sir. And speedy live stream setup.
I was going to suggest ReefDudes should start at 6:08.
You're just used to that offset. So,
That's how I roll.
I know, it's good. At least you're consistently with the offset, at least on your stream. So today we figured we would talk about ICP testing. So many people like to test their aquarium. You can do the home test kits. Some people like to mail off water halfway across the world for someone else to test with fancy machinery. So there's many different options on which you want to test. And we figured it'd be good to kind of dig into, should you ICP test? When do you need to? Is it worth it? And that's going to be different for different people in different situations. So yeah, should be a good one today. What's going on, Greg? So I guess, first of all, I know you sell ICP tests. I believe you do anyways. What's your initial thoughts? Do you recommend most people ICP test or just certain people do?
Oh, I think that, so what's going on is that I see people say, oh my God, my tank is having a problem. This fish died, or everything in my tank is fine, but there's one thing. And everyone replies with, you need to get an ICP test. And I think, no, you need to just test your water. Just find out what's going on. But there's a huge benefit to having an ICP test on your tank from time to time to know what is going on with everything. Plus, it can double check some of your own test kits because it'll double check your calcium, it'll double check your magnesium, it'll double check potassium if you're not good at that test kit. And then there's and then are you keeping up with iodine? Are you, and then there's a bunch of trace elements that none of us care about, none of us think about. And then when you have a problem with blue in your tank, people are like, oh, have you not been keeping up with your manganese? Or they'll say, what about molybdenum? And you're like, I don't know. I just pour in some from the bottle every couple of weeks if I happen to think about it. Instead of knowing, well, that's the thing. You need a regime. You need to have a plan of action. You need to know how much you need, how much to put in, verify it with another test, to make sure you're not overdosing it because that can cause another problem. And that way you can dial in what your tank needs specifically, or you can just do the whole guessing game and just have no clue what you're doing.
Yeah, so I have a lot of it depends when it comes down to ICP tests, because they're not the cheapest tests in the world, right? They're like 40, $50 for an ICP test. And if you have a nano tank, you could spend that $50 on a bucket of salt, and if something's off, just do a big water change. You got multiple big water changes for the same price as your ICP test. So on a small tank, I question it a lot more, but the bigger system gets, I think, kind of the more value that it gets. Especially,
I feel like, oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just gonna say, I feel like sometimes you've tried everything to figure out what's going on with your tank, and then if nothing else makes sense, then the ICP is a good fallback position. Last year, people got away from saying get an ICP test and said you need a biome test. And so I looked at the biome test information. I looked at what some people were getting. And while I'm looking forward to that becoming better and better, I saw like 3 of them and, 3 results. And the people that were told, here's your stuff, weren't given any kind of a call to action. They weren't told what they needed. They weren't told what to get. The one thing I heard that existed that people usually would get from that company, they had none in stock. Now, that was the point of all that, because you want the information, but then you also want the solution, or at least the recommendation of what is going to be the solution to get things back on track if there is an actual detectable problem.
I think there's a ton of future potential there, but I think it's still very young, and I think we're just building the database currently. I don't think it's at here's the solutions for everything yet. It's just here's the information, what's good, what's not, and then eventually it will correlate.
So I know the biome test is a different topic, but I just wanted to say that when it came out, I was super excited, and they were talking about how they were testing public aquariums, and I was like, oh my God, when can they do us? That was my first thought. But then when I started seeing what we got, I was like, okay, I'm not in any. As a matter of fact, I haven't done it yet. I don't feel like spending $80 or $90 and having a bunch of question marks at the end. I want to know I need their magic rubble, or I need, a specific bacteria in a test vial that I'm going to crack open in my tank. I need to know what I'm going to do to get that dispersed bacteria that we need versus having a system that is mono bacterial.
Before we go down the bacteria rabbit hole on the thing, so you obviously do ICP tests. Do you dose trace elements? Do you go down that rabbit hole?
Yes. So
Yeah.
what happened was, let me kind of catch you up. 2 years ago, I started to ICP test a little bit more frequently. And matter of fact, I've used it even to verify my new batch of salt is trustworthy. And that sounds like an expensive thing. Here you buy your salt, and then you got to send in, like you said, a $40 or $50 test to verify that your salt is good. Well, the salt that I buy is a barrel that holds 1,026 gallons of salt water. So that's basically a year's worth of salt. So I want to know the barrel is going to be good for the year. So for me, a $50 test makes sense.
That's
For
fair.
someone that's buying a bag of salt for $25, no, you're not going to pay $50 to test it. You're going to assume, like I would myself, that everything in the bag is correct and that you don't have to worry.
Yeah.
But Devin knows the different salts on the market, no matter what brand you pull out of a hat, have every one of them had an issue happen at some point that caused all kinds of chaos on the internet, and people lost their minds, and some people lost corals, and others were furious with them, and others switched brands. So that's going to happen no matter what. But if you were buying a large barrel, a bucket, or you're buying a pallet of salt, for example, let's say you're buying 5-6 boxes of 200-gallon salt at a time, you know those are all from the same production run because they all came in at once, might be worth doing the test just to kind of know what you're getting out of the box. What is your alkalinity? What is your potassium? What is going to be your iodine level? Where do these different numbers come into play? But you asked me about trace elements, and I didn't want you to think I ignored that. So what happened last year, I was going to give a talk at MACNA about trace elements, and I was determined to really put go all in with this talk. So you give a talk at MACNA, and you get paid, a couple $100 honorarium. But I was buying and shipping an ICP test every single week for 2 months. So you can see the honorarium didn't even come close to covering my expenses when it came to this.
Yeah.
But what I was doing was I was sending in a test every single Monday, and I even almost immediately gave up on doing regular mail. It was too slow. One of the samples never even got there at all. And so I just started paying for overnight shipping. So now I've got an expensive kit with overnight shipping. So it really was costing me $50 to $60 a week. But I was getting weekly information. And I've got a spreadsheet. Matter of fact, Devin, I'll take a screenshot and send it to you. Okay. And you can throw it on the screen if you want. So this is dated information. This is from it goes back to 2021 and goes all the way to October of last year.
Now, were these weekly testings of your tank or of salt? What were you testing weekly?
Of my tank, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this in your messenger.
All right.
That way you can just do your pasting magic over there with your OBS.
I'll work some magic.
All right, so there's that.
Okay.
So I was able to literally look week after week and see what was changing up and down. And I'm not talking about things like calcium. Calcium I didn't even care about. Sodium I didn't care about. Chloride I didn't care about. Salinity I cared about. Phosphate I cared about. They don't test nitrate, so I didn't care about that. But when I wanted to start learning about the different trace elements like cesium, vibranium, is that the right one, vibranium? Am I saying something from Marvel?
We'll go with it. That
vanadium.
Vibranium. Yeah, that's totally like Black Panther.
Yes, I was like, that sounds wrong. But chromium, cobalt. Cobalt was a huge one. Cobalt, you're supposed to have 0.003 milligrams per liter, which is nothing. I mean, it is a thousandth of a milligram, right? And I was putting it in my tank every single week. I did the initial dose I was told to use. Then after X amount of time, they said, okay, we want you to double it. So I doubled the dose, and I was putting that every week, every day for the week, sent off my test. And then I was tripling it. I was doing triple strength, and I was like, oh my God, because it would have been so much easier to just put in one drop of pure cobalt in my reef and just watch what happens. But like, don't you do that. Don't you dare put in a drop of cobalt. I'm like, really? Okay. So I was putting in diluted cobalt, and then they said, okay, make it twice as strong, 3 times as strong. And every week, week after week after week, it came back not detected, not detected, not detected, not detected. You can see it right there on the far right is where it says cobalt on line 14. And as you scroll across, you'll see ND, 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 ND. And then finally, October 3rd, it said 0.001. I finally made some cobalt appear in my tank. Now, why does cobalt matter? Because it was one of those things that adds color to your tank. It actually takes on certain specific colors. Barium, is one that takes care of proper skeletal growth.
Hmm.
So it's an important one. If you're caring about now aluminum, we always hear about people are like, oh my God, my aluminum's so high. How do I get it out of my tank?
I was already in
It
the
can,
chat.
yeah,
Yeah.
and see, aluminum can be a problem, but some aluminum is necessary for your corals to be bright. So that's an interesting one that a lot of people don't know about. And all of these trace elements, every one of them does something.
Yeah.
So if you were to look at the Reef Moonshiners
Hmm.
group, they use ATI for their ICP test, which I've not personally used, but I have one here to send in one day. And because that was the thing, get everyone on the same ICP test, it's so much easier. If
Yeah.
I come into you with Triton and you come with ATI and he comes with ICP analysis and you have all these different ones and they're all different measurements. Like for example, if you look at that sheet I gave you and you look at cobalt, in the very first column, or I'm sorry, the first blue
Second.
column,
Yeah.
no, yeah, the very first column, it says 10 parts per billion is what they recommend.
Hmm.
But Reef Labs, on the other hand, says 0.003 mech per liter. So how could I work with you if you were like, well, I can't get 10 parts per billion? I'm like, well, I don't know how much that is. I need to know how much is mech per liter because I'm helping you. So you see, it was one of those things where I created columns to figure out what the different brands were telling me.
Yeah.
But then I decided to just keep going with Reef Labs because I really liked the way their layout works on the page, the results. And they give you recommendations, and it's very, man, it's super helpful website, and I've watched the website improve. I'd say once a month something new appeared on the screen. I was like, whoa, I haven't seen this before. This is neat, and I can
Nice.
unfold this now and learn more about such and such. And so I was literally dosing very specific trace elements rather than a bottle of trace elements.
Yeah.
I was putting in some cobalt, some manganese, some molybdenum until I discovered I went too high. Stopped that one, never needed to use it again. And there's like 3 or 4 other ones I was using.
That is one thing I will say, which you mentioned too about the different tests. I mean, I've used the Fauna Marines. I think I've used the ICP analysis one. I think I've used Reef Labs. I think I've used ATI. I think I've used ICP. It's not as useful if you jump around with different companies because, again, like you mentioned, they report them in different methods,
Yeah.
right? They may, okay, one's parts per billion, one's, whatever, ppm, one's milligrams. Like if they do it, and you got to do a lot of math to figure it out. That, and you don't necessarily have that history that's easily graphable and everything else. So if you are going to do it, I think it is wise to pick one.
Yeah.
Now, I've said this a few times, but I also think if you're someone that never does water changes, I think it's a lot more important if you never do
good
water
point.
changes and if you're doing dosing trace elements, right? Or if you do big regular water changes, you're probably going to be deficient still, but you're not going to be bottomed out of anything.
Yeah.
Because you're replacing it. So I think that plays a lot into it. Like if you do 50% water changes every month, you're probably okay for most things. If you never do water change, you're probably out of a lot of things if you don't dose trace elements.
And I'm not a big water change person, as you know. I do them sporadically. I probably do 4 or 5 a year, and that isn't even the same size. It could be a 20-gallon water change. It could be a 70-gallon water change. It could be a 200-gallon water change. It just depends on what I'm doing with my tank at the time. But no, I am not a regular water change person, and I haven't been for the last decade or longer. I just do it as needed, or maybe out of guilt. Oh, I should do one because I haven't done one in forever, kind of a thing. Or, oh, I should, whatever. So I sent you a link in your messenger.
Okay.
That is actually my results from the last ICP test. And if you can, I don't know if you can pull that up on your screen in a window and scroll through that web page. This is totally shareable. I don't care.
We have the capabilities.
Do you? Okay, so at the top section, it shows the important warnings, and it's in pink. And then it shows what's notably changed since the last test. And then there's ratios, which I thought was really interesting. Yeah, you see that? Doesn't look pink on your screen. That's funny. But it is for me. Maybe because I'm sharing it, so it's very generic.
Yeah.
But you can see they were worried about specific things that I was deficit in. And I needed more lithium, which is funny. You always hear about, oh, my lithium's too high, and mine's not high enough. The ratios are interesting. We've always known that your calcium to magnesium are supposed to be 3 to 1. So whatever your calcium level is, triple it, that should be your magnesium level. And on theirs, they actually say your ratio should be between 2.9 and 3.1. Like I said, 3 times. And they said mine was at 3.4. So I was a little off on mine. And matter of fact, I was dosing calcium in a bottle of very, very concentrated calcium chloride to make up for the lack that my calcium reactor was not putting out.
So just out of curiosity, what have you experienced if you're not within that ratio?
Well, I mean, I didn't experience something bad because I was doing everything right with my tank. So I can't say, oh, well, I saw this ratio and I missed it by a mile, and that's why every bird's nest is dead. I didn't have
Hmm.
that happen. Matter of fact, people saw my reef and said, I cannot believe how quickly your corals are growing in. So, in a way, this expensive ICP testing and dosing of these specific lacking trace elements and not putting in all the other ones I already have plenty of was probably a reason why the corals grew so quickly. Because people saw my tank, I did it before and after on my YouTube channel, and I showed like, I don't know, January 3rd of 2022. And then I showed them November 10th, which was the anniversary date and they were like, how did you do that in less than 12 months? Because it was like sticks on lots of rock, and it was like, you couldn't find the rock.
Nice.
And they were just like, that's amazing. And I was like, well, I think it was me putting these things in. Now, I will tell you, I ran into a weird thing that I never have explained, but I talked with the people over at Reef Labs specifically. Phil is the guy that runs it, does the test, does the calibration, does everything. And he's a physicist, so he knows much too much information. And when I talk to him, I feel super dumb. And when I told him I was doing this Magna talk, he said, oh, okay, well, have you considered, and he went into all this stuff. And when he was done talking, I said, I should not be giving this talk. I don't know anything. I am so wrong. I completely misinterpreted everything. But I'll tell you one thing that will help everyone. If you want to get a really good ICP test from any company, the first thing you should do, according to Phil, is get your salinity to 35 ppt.
Yeah,
not 1.026, 35 ppt. If you can get that to 30, and he measures 35 ppt on his test, all the numbers you're looking at are great. And the reason I say that is because I was chasing manganese. I put in bottles and bottles and bottles of manganese, and week after week, I kept getting not detected, not detected. I'm like, oh my God, I've put in so much. And he said, this is a really hard one to raise. I'm like, okay. But I kept putting it in anyway, and the corals were growing. And he said, there's a good chance the manganese would have shown up if you had taken care of the salinity. So you got to be kidding me. And he was like, it's really important. It changes everything by a factor of some kind of percentile. And I was like, oh. And I felt like such a dummy for not caring, because he kept saying your salinity is too low. I was like, yeah, I know. But I was like,
everything's like on the bar with the salinity level.
Yes. And I missed that memo. So here I am throwing these chemicals in there trying to fix stuff, and the salinity wasn't where it needed to be. Now, it wasn't crazy low. Matter of fact, on here it says my salinity was 34.3. So I'm 0.7 off. Well, 0.7 off could make all the other numbers look differently on this result. I was like, oh my God, I've really messed up.
I had one ICP test before, my salinity was a lot lower, and I was like, why are my numbers all low? And it was like 33 or something. It was like far too low, and I corrected it. But it messes with everything across the board.
Now, I'll tell you another cool thing that happened through the ICP testing that I loved. Because that's the thing, everyone's like, well, how can you trust them? And I've heard if you send in the same sample, three at a time, you'll get all these different results. So it means their machines are inactive, or the people are bad, or whatever. I didn't care about trying to prove them wrong. That was never my goal. My goal was send in a sample, get some information, move forward. Don't try to stump them. Don't try to trick them and say, oh, this was RODI water, and you said it had salinity. And I was like, no. I wasn't trying to do that. But I had these bottles of something called Coral Essentials that were sent to me a couple of years ago. And when I was looking at my ICP results, I was like, I'm missing this, I'm missing this, I'm missing this. And I looked at the bottles like, wow, these bottles have the very things I'm missing. What if I were to dose this based on what they recommend? And I probably had a month's worth of liquids, because my tank's so big. And so I said, what I think I could do, I could follow their formula of dosing, their products, and then a month from now, send in my ICP test, and I'll see if those numbers came up, because I'm literally putting in the things I don't have. And so I did. I sent it in, and they all came up. Not only did they come up, I blew iron out of the water. I had way too much iron in my tank, and I was like, oh, okay. So, I probably was putting in something and forgot I put it in and put more, or, there's a chance of that. That does happen, especially when you have a lot of things you're adding manually. And that was the other thing, is that I didn't dose anything with a doser. I needed to be hands-on, squirt in the tank every single day, and count the drops. And it took me like 5 or 10 minutes a day what I was doing, but I was on this mad scientist track, and I wanted to see what I could do.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that happened, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off. The other thing that happened was that my iodine went from one test to really high. And I was so fascinated that that happened because the day I was sending in a sample, 4 hours before, I put in Predibio's IOD plus, which is their iodine. And so that is something you dose every 15 days. So I poured in their glass vial of IOD plus, and then 4 hours later, I grabbed a sample, put it inside the bag, mailed it off. They got it overnight, and they said, your iodine's way up. And I was like, it worked. I know what's in the vial. It's actually iodine. You know, it was kind of neat
Legit.
to prove.
Yeah.
To prove that it's a real thing and they can get a real accurate measurement based on something you did. And it's not just a bunch of BS, because I think some people really have massive doubts and don't want to believe it or don't want to trust it.
Okay, so on that one, now again, because there was one of the comments in the chat earlier too from Greg about how someone sent in to 3 different companies, they got different results. The consideration too is each machine is not going to be calibrated identically the same, right? They're all going to be a bit different. And I think that's one reason it's important to stick with one company, because their machines are likely going to be calibrated the same. And even if the number's a little bit off, you're more looking at the trends with a lot of things, right? If you're deficient, all of a sudden, okay, you have a reading now, you're in a happy range, that's better. And a lot of times, like, the exact specific number doesn't really matter. You just need to have some within like an acceptable range. Or if you're dosing it, am I dosing too much of it, right? Are my numbers climbing? Are they tanking? And I think with most values in this hobby, the trending is almost more important than the specific number.
Let me give you a comparison here. What was the name of the person that brought this up? Do you remember?
Well, that was Greg's comment about the 3 different companies. He said he was referencing
Greg,
somebody else.
Greg, I'm going to talk to you.
Yeah.
Greg, listen. I had a hydrometer. I had a digital refractometer. I had the Hanna salinity checker. I had another refractometer from a different company. Everything was calibrated to 35 ppt solution that I had from a brand new bottle from Accuracy from Two Little Fishies. And then I took my tank water and put it on all 4 devices, saying, now I'm going to know which one tells me the truth. And like the hydrometer was a huge one from Tropic Marin, the big, super tall glass one that's, this big around.
How'd that fit in the bottle?
I had to pour 3 bottles of Accuracy into it to have enough liquid to do that test. And then I had all my results from my 4 devices that were in front of me, 4 different companies, if you want to think about it that way. Nothing matched, and I had no idea which was telling me the truth. 0 idea. And I was using calibrated stuff, and I was like, at this point, I'm more confused. And, it kind of goes to the saying, a man with 2 wristwatches doesn't know what time it really is.
Yeah, fair. Now, how much were they off? That was Greg Kale, by the way. How much are they off?
You're asking me something I did 2 years ago? I don't know. But
That's
they
fine.
were not close to each other. It was ridiculous. I was just like, oh my God, none of these are telling me. Because I expected them to say 1.026 SG or actually 1.0265. Or I was expecting it to be 35, or something like that. And it wasn't. Nothing matched. And I was like, this is crazy.
You just averaged them all.
It can be frustrating.
You just averaged them. I know.
Well, I mean, honestly, it wasn't even wanting to average it. I wanted to know which one to trust so I can basically toss the others.
Do you remember which was the closest to 35 PPT?
I think my refractometer was the one I trusted the most. Probably the one I still use to this day.
Was it closer than the bobber?
Yeah.
The Tropic Marin?
Yeah,
really?
Matter of fact,
Interesting.
The bobber disappointed me. I was really counting on that one to be magical. And then later I broke the stupid thing. I was like, okay, well, whatever, we're done.
Yeah, they're delicate.
Yeah, they are.
Interesting. So you use the refractometer the most, eh?
Yeah, I really do. I have a salinity probe that kind of tells me stuff. Let me see what the number says on Apex right now, just for fun. It says I'm at 34.3. That's hilarious. That matches my results from Reef Labs from 4 months ago.
I'm checking to 35.9 on one tank and
Oh my God.
33.5 on the other tank. Huh, looks like I got
Well, the first tank, you're
levels.
going to take your fish and knock the salt off their gills. I mean, that's too much salt.
Yeah, half a point's fine.
35.9?
No, 0.5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, on a Nano, honestly, I would just do some big water changes and reset your tank and everything's happy. A large tank where you never do water changes, or you're going down the trace rabbit hole, that's where I think, personally,
Yes.
that
I
ICP
agree.
testing has the most value.
Yeah. And verifying that salt mix is good too. Now, what I mean by that is you literally take brand new RODI water, mix up whatever, 5 or 10 gallons of salt water from your batch of salt, grab a sample, send it off.
Now,
I mean, that's what I mean. You don't send them the salt. You literally mix it up to the right salinity and send them that sample. Oh, here's a trick that Chris Meckley from ACI recommends.
yeah.
He says don't have any air in the vial, where I would usually leave a little air because I was thinking it's being mailed, it might expand. And he says, no, you put the vial completely underwater. You cover the lid underwater, so there's zero air in there. I was like, huh, okay. And then I heard Phil mention the same thing, like, make sure you don't send me any air. I was like, I've not heard anyone mention that but these two guys. So.
My guess is it probably somehow reacts or changes your parameters ever so slightly over time. Now, okay, this is a question I have. Do you know the answer? Because I know you said, you're freaking overnighting it super speedy. If you do that or you take the slowest, be there in a couple of weeks, is there going to be a big change in parameters if it's sitting in that little vial for 2 weeks on its own?
There will be some loss over time. And if a package is lost, like for example, when I sent that first sample that never arrived, and then one day, I think it was 3 weeks later, and it was a really important sample. I know you're like, what do you mean? But no, this was like, I had been dosing my new trace elements for 10 days, and I was supposed to send in that sample, and that way we could know exactly how to dial in my trace perfectly. That sample never showed up. And I was in the middle of that spreadsheet. And then after 3 weeks, Reef Lab says, hey, we got your sample. I said, could you just do me a favor? Or actually, I think I got the email saying it got delivered. And I wrote them, would you please just run the sample anyway? I know the data's questionable, but I need the data for my talk. And so if you look on that spreadsheet somewhere on there,
I was actually trying to look if there's a gap.
It has like an asterisk or something in there. It just showed that it was like questionable. I'm trying to remember which date it was. But 7/18, I don't know. Somewhere I have a note where I said that this was a
questionable one,
an iffy one, but it was like, but still it allowed me to kind of see, was I trending up or down? Did I stay the same? But it was such a critical one. And they were like, it's so, and they told, Chris and Mark, it's so unfortunate that we didn't get that sample. I mean, everything hinges off that one.
Yeah.
It's like, But I do tell you this, I always try to ship on Monday. I don't want to ship like Friday for a sit over the weekend to finally start its trip next Monday. So I try to get things out. Like today, it's Wednesday. I really wanted to send one this week and I didn't. And I don't feel like sending it tomorrow for a Friday delivery because they might not even run it till Monday. So I want to catch them when they're in the mood to do my sample.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. The sooner they can get into it, I feel like it's more accurate.
Now, is it... I've always wondered that because, like, I never do the super fast shipping because it costs a fortune from Canada. I'm like, meh, I'll get my results in 2.5 weeks. I'm like, whatever. Yeah. It's like $12 instead of like $40 to ship it. So,
yeah, I think I was paying like $17 for overnight. Maybe it was higher. I think the first time it was higher, and then I did like 2 day instead of overnight.
Yeah.
So it was like second day, and so they got it relatively quickly. And I, of course, like I said, this company, I really like Reef Labs. Once you create your deal, it sends you an email saying it's been created, and then you send it, and then you get an email saying we've received it. I mean, you know what's happening. I've done other samples where I just sent a sample and had no idea, and I'm like, what is taking so long? And then finally, either I'll get an email saying it's ready, or I have to call them and then wait a few more days for this email to show up saying, okay, it's ready. I'm like,
oh, really?
What were you doing? Why are you sitting on this? Give me my results. I mean, it's an expensive process, and so you kind of want the results. You don't want to be on your... I mean, think about it. I don't need to know how my oil was in my truck in December when I'm in January. I need to know if my oil is good now. I mean, for the engine's for the safety of the engine. And to tell me something happened weeks ago doesn't help me when I'm trying to isolate an issue, which is another reason why I am recommending quicker overnight shipping. Yeah, now, I do run a company that ships all the time, so I do get some savings compared to just walking into a UPS saying, can you overnight this package for me? And they might charge you a lot more. I don't know. But I just, I've done the thing where I've mailed and waited, and I've decided it's just not worth it for me. I'd just rather pay the second day air.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So you're obviously, it's worth, Camp ICP is worth it. You also have 400 gallons of water, so it's definitely worth it. Yeah. Now, I actually had another good question for you on it, but I forgot what it was. So most of these...
I'm going to wait for you to think of it. We're just
That's
going to sit in
fine.
silence while Devin thinks.
Devin is buffering.
Yes.
Okay, there's a couple questions. Are there any in the U.S.? Reef Labs, I believe, is in the U.S., right?
Yes. Reef
Yeah.
Labs is in the U.S. ICP Analysis. Okay, so Reef Labs is in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
ICP Analysis is in Denver. Fauna Marin ships overseas. Triton, I believe, tests in California now, but they used to always ship to Germany until they got their own machine. So you have another company that's local to do at least one of their tests. Now, Triton has their standard OES, and then they have their NDOC. And the NDOC
Yeah.
is the one that most of us care about because that's the nutrients, which would be your nitrate and phosphate. You know, it's the but that one, I don't know. I could be wrong, but last I heard, NDOC had to go overseas, so you had to kind of wait.
I believe so.
But that might have changed. I don't know. Maybe they've got a machine by now. I don't know.
Okay, interesting comment in the chat. Spencer, thank you for this. He says, for work, I routinely analyze groundwater samples. Air in bottles allows VOCs and other compounds to dissolve out of the water and possibly skew the results. So that's why.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just think even decaying oxygen in that little bit, because you're thinking I need space for it to expand and contract, but I think that could be just rotting air, anoxic, and that could affect the water sample to some degree. Now, I would not send a sample during dead of winter when your sample's probably going to freeze solid on the way there. I don't think there's a benefit to that. I don't know the answer. I would ask the analysis place, like, hey, listen, if I send you a sample and it freezes solid and then it thaws on your end, does that change things? And just see what they say. And if they say you're fine, go with it. And if they say, we'd rather you don't, then go with that. I would follow their advice because they're the ones doing the tests.
That's a solid point. Didn't consider it, but a solid point. Even like one of my reagents, like I store a lot of stuff in my shed. It was like frozen outside. I bring in my reagents. I'm like, I'm gonna let that out for a couple of days before I mix it up.
Are you talking about the reagents for like the Trident?
Yeah, or Malcotronic one, but I want to grab my jug.
I didn't know the answer to that. And I saw somebody from Neptune mention, they said if you have reagents that freeze, just wait for them to thaw to room temperature before you use them.
Yeah.
And I think you still do the shake the bottle a little bit, just because, but they actually can freeze and not be ruined. That's the one thing I happen to know about that one product.
Perfect. I like the fact that it doesn't die.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, I know. It's good. So the NOC NDOCs, have you ever done those tests? Do you think it's worth doing?
I think I got the kit and didn't send it because I knew I'd have to go and have to wait weeks. And so I think it's in my pile of, I have a lot of extra things here that
Never.
You think I would just do. I mean, really, like Greg said, I should grab all my 4 or 5 different flavors and grab all the samples the same day and just send them all just to use them up, right? And then see what I get and, kind of cross compare and see how they do. But I don't know that I need to know it that badly. I'm super happy with Reef Labs. I mean, I like that I could actually, I'm not saying you can, but I like that I can call up Phil and talk to him on the phone.
I'm sure he'd answer if I asked.
With ICP analysis, you can't talk to a human being. I've tried and it doesn't go well.
Yeah.
And whoever you're talking to is not the person you want to talk to anyway. So it has to be email, and then you have to wait. And there's that. And I'm an old school guy. I like to pick the phone and talk to people. I'm not a big guy on texting. It's like I just want to have a conversation with you, see how you're doing, catch up on what we need to know, get the answers to the conversation, and hang up the phone.
Yep, that's fair. I should probably do them more than I do it, but I probably do 2 or 3 a year, and more or less just to make sure that my sporadic trace element dosing is still on track and not like vastly done because I forget it many weeks or not overdosing something, which also plausible, right? But I think
I'm
that's
dosing
a
something
big thing.
new.
What are you dosing?
Let me go get it. I'm going to show you. Let me go get it. It's over
Camera's
here.
following you. It's onto you. I can see your reflection in
Wouldn't it
the
be cool
patio.
if the camera had just come all the way over here?
You got to get like a little
I need
gimbal.
a second person. So
It's pretty much is a second person.
I got these.
Oh, I used to do those.
Yeah? So
Yeah.
I'm doing them now because
Nice.
I found in my tank a year and a half ago, I had aquaporin eating flatworms, which was surprising because I hadn't seen them in well over a decade, to the point where I had to go to my website and read my own article to remind me how to deal with them. I just couldn't remember by sure. I was like, let me just read the article because I documented it. But the crazy part was, it was over a year ago. This was after I added a bunch of new corals, right? So you'd think, oh yeah, you didn't dip them. Like, no, I dipped everything. I inspected everything. And the crazy part is that the corals, none of them had acropora flatworms, except for one acropora that had been in my tank for 9 or 11 years, and it just was not doing well. And I looked at it, I was like, what is going on with this coral? It was just an acro, and it looked miserable. And I couldn't see bite marks. I didn't see any problems. And somebody says, have you taken a turkey baster to it yet? I'm like, no. So I thought, all right, expecting when I do the turkey baster, I'm just going to watch the skin blow off, and that's the end of the coral. And what happened was the flatworms went everywhere. I was like, oh, because if I had even a thought that maybe I had acropora flatworms, I would have broken that coral off and put it in a bucket and blown it off in a bucket, so that way they go loose in the bucket. Instead, I set them loose into the reef, and I was so mad at myself because now they're on my Walt Disney. They were on my, what's the worst one?
Did the fish eat them though when you?
No, they didn't know what they were because they'd never seen them before because it'd been 11 years. I'm trying to think what that one's called. Oh, the home wrecker. I mean, landed on all the ones that were like insanely expensive, impossible to replace. And I was just so disappointed in myself for allowing me to, I should never have done that. So anyway, it's been a year. I got lots of healthy, beautiful corals. I don't see issues here and there, but I thought they might still be dwelling in my tank. So I've had several people that are in the industry say, you totally want to use flatworm stop. And I said, okay. So I ordered a bottle of this. And then when I was looking, it said, if you're going to do flatworm stop, you should absolutely use coral booster with it. They go hand in hand. It's like, okay. So basically these 2 bottles is like $200.
Yeah, I've
been
to
there. My door. And when I do the math, because like you said, 400-gallon tank, I did the math. I have to put in 16 milliliters a day daily. That means I get 32 days out of this. So, and the bottle recommends 3 months. So I'm going to be $600 in to eliminate. So what does this stuff do? I don't know. But what I've understood
ICP test
to do is it's, well, yeah, that's what I should do. I should send that in. No, what I'm told is it makes the corals more robust, makes them more
thicker slime coat and
like
stuff.
Better leathery skin. And the corals just, beef up to the point where the acropora flatworms can't penetrate it to hurt it. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I've been doing this a long time. I'm going to just do this too. So I'm going to try this out. I've used it for like 3 days so far. I've got a while to go, but I need to order 2 more bottles of each.
Good luck.
And yeah, and then hopefully I can say I haven't seen acropora flatworm in my tank, ever since, because I haven't seen any.
That's fair. So, okay. Yeah. So a few things on that, because I did dose that for quite a while. Yeah. Now, one of the other guys, all right. So one of the other guys that I know that used it, and he has like beautiful, amazing, a bazillion, every fancy toy they can think of, he used it. He's like, this stuff works, but I didn't use it for flatworms specifically. I used it more because that combination's supposed to have the corals based out and grow faster and whatnot, like better growth and colors. And he's like, it hands down works, and it's like crack to the corals. He's like, but if you stop, they are not going to be happy.
So do you have to taper off?
Yeah, you have to dwindle it down over time. So when I used it, because I wasn't using it for flatworms, I was more just trying to get the extra growth and stuff out of it. Yeah. I only dosed it at half dose. So I dosed at 50% dose. And I did that for many, many bottles and eventually ran out, and I just haven't bothered replacing it. But I was always scared of them needing their fix and not having it and being all angry and not being as happy. So that's why I never did the half dose.
I'm going to need 3 bottles of each, but basically do what I have to do.
Yeah.
So maybe when it gets to bottle number 3, like half of, the second half of bottle number 3, I should do it every other day.
Now, you could try that. Now, you could also make a semi DIY version. I don't know if this is identical, but in theory, one of the main ingredients is a wormwood extract, which I've also made my own. I also tried dosing that for a while too. So it's hard to say if it's the same thing, but it's another thing if you want to mad scientist a bit.
Well, I can tell you this, on the bottle it says shake well before dosing.
Yeah.
So those of you that just hook this up to a dosing pump, I don't know who's shaking their stuff, but apparently you're supposed to shake it.
Yeah, I never did that. It was on a dosing pump.
I'm sure with you had a magnetic stirrer that did a magic thing every day.
Should have, but didn't. Yeah. I know. So.
Okay. Well, that's good information to know, because I know about that. I will tell you that here's another weird thing that happened with my tank with the trace element dosing. My tank had nice low nitrates, under 20 ppm. Yep. That is what I consider nice and low. Everyone else is like,
Happy.
no, nice and low is like 2 and 3. Like, no,
Two-
anything under 20.
5 to 20 is a happy range.
Then I dosed all my trace elements, and my
Mm-hmm.
nitrates every single week went higher and higher and higher and higher and higher, up to 80.
Yep.
I'm like, what is going on? I talked to everyone I knew. Everyone I knew said, that makes no sense. I'm like, okay, well, thank you. That doesn't help me whatsoever. I even double checked the kit, obviously. I tested a different tank that had 0 nitrate and it measured 0. I tested my salt water, had 0. I tested my RODI water, had 0. I tested my reef again, it's 80. I'm like, oh. So the kit works. Phil, the mad physicist over at Reef Labs, said,
Yep.
maybe, and he didn't say fact, okay? Maybe what you did by adding these trace elements that your tank was lacking is that you strengthened a strain of bacteria in your tank that took out your good nitrifying bacteria. And you no longer have nitrate consuming bacteria. I was like, well, where do I get that at? And no, he did not say order a biome test. But I mean, I don't know. So I keep track of my skimmer's output. I test the tank, and last test I did was 65, so it's down a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's just like,
Something else that I did in the past when I did have flatworms that worked reasonably well is I made potassium and salt water. I mixed it up in a spray bottle. I drained my tank down and I sprayed all the corals because potassium is going to like kill and get rid of the things. So I did that. So potassium chloride or potassium salts, like they work pretty dang well as dips. And you can dose potassium tank. So I made a diluted solution. I drained the tank down, sprayed all those acros, and I found that worked really well too as well. So another potential
I missed
thought.
that video.
It's somewhere in the archives of the weekly videos. But that was one thing that worked pretty good.
That's crazy. You know, Jake Adams had a crazy idea years ago where he talked about when you get new frags, you need to clean them. He suggested setting up a water pick full of salt water.
I saw that. That was a good idea, actually. I actually looked for a used one after watching that video, but I didn't see any. I was like, if I can find them for like 20 bucks.
They're like 20 bucks, yeah.
No, they're like 50.
Well, maybe post-COVID.
I know, but I thought that was a great idea too. They're like little tiny pressure
I
washers.
was like, that's pretty brilliant. You know, you could put peroxide in it. You could just put in just regular salt water if you wanted. You could do a solution.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of smart to like blast your coral and blast off any nuisance algae that bothers you.
Yep.
But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on ICP. I just feel like, yes, it is beneficial. But like you said, you do it 2 or 3 times a year. So that doesn't really do anything because you can't track what's happening. You just kind of know it's sort of the same as last time.
If I wasn't dosing, if I did lots of water changes and didn't dose trace elements, I probably wouldn't care.
Yeah.
I don't do that many water changes these days. I'm a slacker on it. I randomly do them, every like couple times a year. I'll get the sand bit of vacuum and I'll do a big water change. But I become a slacker on the regular ones these days. So I try to dose trace elements weekly. I was doing before I had a kid, a baby in my life. I was doing, I was really good for a while doing the daily dosings, and then I was a slacker and I hardly ever did them. And now I like basically times it by 7, and I'm attempting to do weekly doses now. So just doing it more once a week, and I'm still a slacker, so I got to get better at this. But besides the point, it's one of those things where with trace elements, it's better to underdose than overdose, but you also don't want to be deficient. So if you're not going to do an ICP test, if the bottle recommends, you dose 1 mil, maybe dose half a mil. But it is good to periodically do them to make sure you're not, excessively high in something. Like
another number that people don't talk about much, but it's strontium.
That's important.
Actually an important one. And I remember talking with somebody at a frag swap. I love it when people just share some knowledge with you and you're like, what? I've never heard this before. So he was saying, you know how when you reach in your tank, no, actually he didn't say it. It turned into a conversation, but he said, I mentioned something about how when I reach in my tank and I'm cleaning, that I might break acros too easily. Like they're just so brittle. And he said, well, you don't have enough strontium. I was like, what? He goes, it makes them tougher. And I was like, huh, it's one of those ones I never cared about. So I, of course, watch them in the ICP test all the time. And it's always around 8, 8.1, 8.3. It's in that spreadsheet. And I was like, okay, strontium's solid. And that is one of my Prodibio additives, Strontium Plus. And I've been doing Prodibio basically every 15 days for like the last 12 years.
Yeah. Really?
It's just a thing. I just do it. Yeah, I've been doing it for a super long time.
Are those the little
Prudivia
glass
reached out
vials?
to me years ago. Yeah, and they said to me, we'd like you to use our product, and I was like, all right, I'll do it. And in the beginning, they gave me some.
Yeah.
Now I sell it, so I always buy my own, obviously, because I have to get inventory. And so when I need some, I just go get some from the shop.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been dosing for a super long time. I just put mine in yesterday. Let me ask you this: when you put in the Korallenzucht products, did you turn off the skimmer at all, or did you just not even care?
Didn't care.
Because it doesn't say to. And I was like, I didn't mention it. And so I turned mine off for 20 minutes and set a timer to remind me to turn it back on.
I may or may not have dosed those ones to most of the stuff I dosed to where the overflow goes into, like in that section of the sump. There was some stuff that I did dose to the return pump chamber. Okay. Possibly I dosed it there instead, so I didn't bypass the skimmer for a while, but not 100%.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering. Because like last night I fed my reef and I poured in everything on top of the fish. I was like, here's your Prodivio, here's your Korallenzucht, here's your this, here's your that. And the fish are swimming around like, okay, everything's tasting metallic in our mouths. What is happening? I was like, yeah, sorry, it's a little bit overdosed. In 10 minutes the pump comes on.
Don't worry, it'll be okay. It all works out.
You'll be fine. I know your eye is twitching. That's okay.
Yeah. Is fluoride one that you are always deficient in? That one always comes back as low on me. Actually, I have your test open. I can look. Fluoride.
I sent you a photograph, not a thing you can click on.
No, I got your link though.
Oh yeah, you can look in there too. That's true.
Maybe they don't. Do they test fluoride? Maybe they don't.
Oh, let me check something because there are certain things they don't. If you look at, well, no, that gave you a different thing.
Okay.
Hang on, it's got to be on here, and I'm just blind.
No, I don't see it. Okay, maybe it's something they don't test.
I don't see it at all.
Yeah, they don't test it probably. I know ATI tests it. That's one thing I'm generally deficient in. I always have to do a big corrective dose eventually.
Well, we know fluoride is in drinking water, and it's meant for our human teeth to be stronger, is what I've been told since I was a kid.
Yep.
And ICP analysis never measured it either, because that's the difference between Reef Labs and ICP analysis. ICP analysis also measures silver, gold, cerium. I don't know how to say it. Cerium, lanthanum, antimony, tin, titanium, and tungsten. And none of those even are in Reef Labs because they don't pertain to our reef tank, basically.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so they've just eliminated them. But I don't even see the fluoride on here at all, which I probably have had on a different test, like maybe Triton, or like you said, ATI.
I know ATI does. I think Triton does, but not 100%.
They probably do, because I've done Triton before as well.
Yeah, I don't know. It's always interesting. I've still got to finish fixing mine from last time. Thanks for the reminder.
But knowing iodine, knowing potassium, these are things that really matter. And people don't think about potassium nearly enough. I've been talking about it now for 2 years because I lost a lot of corals because my tank was at 50% of what it should have been.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a major element. It's not a trace element. It's a major element. It's supposed to be 400 ppm or higher, like calcium. And think about calcium is 375 to 450. 400 should be calcium, right? Potassium needs to be 400. And mine was coming in like 198, and I was losing corals all across my tank at the time, and I didn't know I was missing potassium. And it took me a series of tests, over a 17-day period, I was trying to figure out what was going on. I mean, for the first few days, I didn't know what was going on. And people are like, well, you should send in an ICP test. I'm like, oh, you guys say that for everything. Anytime there's something wrong, send in a test. And I was like, fine, I'll send it in, but my water's perfect. And what I meant was, I trust my new salt water. I've been using the same brand of salt for so long. I have no reason to doubt the salt. It says on the barrel.
That is the worst reply. It's like, what are your parameters? Like, my parameters are good. I'm like, what does that mean? Good means
I agree. I know I sound like an idiot when I said that. But no, the barrel had a sticker on the side that showed all the guaranteed numbers in that barrel. Like they literally tested, print the label, stick it on the barrel, and ship it to me. I'm like, okay, well then my potassium is fine. All these things are fine. So after whatever it was, like a week, so I told you it took me 17 days. So by day 7, I sent up a water sample, and then I had to wait like a week for the answer. So now I'm in 14 days of my 17 days, right? 14 days in, I finally get my results, and the numbers are horrible. I'm like, wow, these are like way off. And I actually asked a couple of friends, like, can you look at these numbers? And based on these numbers, how would you fix it? That's all I cared about. And they both unanimously said, send in another sample. I'm like, no, I'm not waiting another week. Yeah. So I called ICP Analysis in Denver, and I said, I want to send you a sample today that you're going to get tomorrow, and you're going to give me the results tomorrow night. I'm going to overnight it. And they said, yep, no problem. And I did, and they did, and I got my answer that my numbers are terrible. But my new my new salt water from a brand new barrel I just opened that day for the test measured perfect. So I knew I had bad salt I'll never use again. I had new salt I could totally trust. I went ahead and I used it for safe water changes. And I dosed 3 liters of potassium over the next 3 weeks. And through ICP testing, could see the potassium go up, 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 up.
Yeah.
Because the test kit was kind of iffy, but these guys I trust.
Nice.
It's good. The hobbyist potassium test kit
Sucks.
I've been told 100 times
Sucks.
the one from Salifert is the best one, but I never bought that one.
Oh,
so I don't know. But if I used I used Fonamarin and I used Elos. And I felt like I knew what I was doing with them, but it was so nice to have ICP just do it and tell me. And I could literally see, and so as I look at the numbers here, I averaged, well, I'll just tell you the numbers: 448, 451, 457, 443, 430, 435, 424, 428, 424, 450. So I mean, it just stayed stable. I haven't had to dose it in a while. I have a bottle hooked up to a dosing pump. It's put nothing in 6 months. I probably need to shake the bottle. But if I needed it, I've got it here, which I feel is important. And I know a lot of people tend to have potassium in their tanks around 360, 340. And if you would just bring it up, your reef would benefit from it. But if you can't test for it, ICP will.
So yours is at 450-ish?
Yeah. Well, as of October. Like I said, I need to send a fresh sample. After my Macna talk was over, I just kind of put the brakes on spending. I was like, okay. Because I spent an ICP test a week for
that's a lot.
9 weeks in a row. It was really expensive. And I got the numbers I wanted for the information, and then I just kind of put it on hold. So I need to go ahead and get out there and send a sample. And then the holidays happened, and then I'd see like an email come in. We're going to be closed from this date to this date. I'm like, well, I don't want to mail it now because I don't want it sitting in some PO box or whatever,
Yeah.
So this week I said, okay, I'll do it Monday, and here it is Wednesday. I was like, dang it! So I guess it's sort of like starting a new diet. I'm gonna start on Monday.
Just keep pushing that ahead.
This Monday, I'm shipping my sample off. I'll do it this Monday. I'm going to do it because I want to know. I want to know where I'm at because I want to know what I'm deficit so I can order those elements that are lacking and start putting them back in the tank because I actually like that. Now, here's something cool that Chris at ACI Aquaculture recommended. He said, get yourself a gallon of RODI water and then put in all the trace elements you would need for the 7 days. So like if you're using 15 milliliters of this, put that in the gallon times 7 days. So 15 times 7, put that in. And he says, then get the next one. If you need 6 of this, put in 6 times 7, 42 drops of that in there. Put everything in, shake it up, hook it up to a single dosing pump, and let that, and dose the entire gallon in 7 days. So you got to do your math. You got to figure out what all your stuff is, figure out your total number of true milliliters in the bottle, divide by 7 days, and dose that daily. And he recommends dosing it throughout the day, not throughout the night.
Does that make a difference?
Do it while the corals, he says that the corals are taking it in, not when they're sleeping. Do it during the daytime.
Good to know. I wouldn't have, I just do it random times, but I will keep that in mind.
And see, that's the thing. I was dosing always like 11 o'clock at night. That was my thing. It was always 10 to 11. It's about time to feed the fish.
Before the bed.
Spend the time putting this in. And he's like, Mark. I'm like, I know. You say daytime. I'm busy in the daytime. So he says, hook it up to a dosing pump. I was like, well, what can I not mix? He goes, everything can go in the gallon.
So there's nothing you can mix.
Don't they interact? He says they all can go in the gallon. Like, there's nothing on this list. He goes, there's nothing on this list. Everything can go in the gallon. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's what he told me.
Well, I guess the water dilutes it enough, it probably would negate anything. Because you probably wouldn't want to mix them in their concentrated form together. But if you're in a gallon of water, it's probably next to nothing.
Even these, it's 60 milliliters of each. I take 2 separate of those urine specimen cups. I fill it up with probably 70 milliliters of RO water. And then I put in my 16 milliliters, and then I literally pour that into my tank. And that way it's diluted, and that way I don't pour in something that might land on Spock's eye and make it worse.
Yeah.
Because you just never know. So I try to do that. So I don't combine those two together. Even though I'm dosing them at the same time, they're in separate cups.
Another thing that I normally do too, is I always dose it to my overflow. That way it has to run through my full sump before it makes it to the tank. Just so you don't dose something super concentrated into a power head, into a coral or a fish or something like that.
And that's the thing. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. Little tips.
My tank's so big, I have 7 feet. And obviously I didn't just pour it in one spot. I do the whole across as far as my arm can reach. And I was like, I just send it across. It's kind of funny.
All lands on the floor. You're like, damn it.
No, I don't throw it. I just spread it wide. I'm like a farmer trying to grow all the corn.
Perfect. Okay, I just looked. I was 400 potassium in my last test.
Nice. Good. You got a good number.
Oh,
And you never dose it.
sometimes. One of my tanks I was deficient though. I got a dose of one tank. Do you know what's funny is back in the early days of me chasing pH and playing with nasty things like potassium hydroxide?
Yeah.
That stuff was freaking magical for pH. However, my potassium got way too high, way too quick to sketchy land. Like, I don't know if it was 550 or 650. It was like borderline, like bad things happen.
Yeah.
So that was good motivation to do a big water change.
Yeah. Yeah, if something's really going wrong with your tank, obviously a big water change can happen. But then after your water change, be a good time to grab a sample and send it off for verification because
Now,
who knows where you're at,
Now, on that note, here's another consideration. Most people send off ICP tests when there's something wrong with their tank.
Yeah.
But when you're like looking at your tank, you're like, this is the best it's ever been. Things are amazing. That might be a good time to send off a test. And you're like, here's a baseline of my tank's happy place.
Yep, I 100% agree. That's great advice. And I've given that advice myself. Like, just know where the numbers were when everything's happy.
The question is, have you done it?
I've done it, yeah. I mean,
checking.
right now, my tank is totally fine. I have no issues with it at all. That's why I want to send off the sample. I kind of want to see where things are. But I'm at the point now where, and we were going to talk about this, but we changed our mind, keeping your arms out of the tank. And I have not had my hand in the tank in months. I mean, literally, I don't reach in for anything. I will use like an acrylic rod and like flip one thing or scooch something. But my skin does not get in the water unless I absolutely have to. And I've not had to. I should. I need to. And now it's time. Now it's time for me to kind of attack the tank and remove some things that don't belong, break some things off that need to go, and kind of create some space. But I have not done anything with that tank in months, and it just grows and grows and grows, and it's looking great.
Tank's probably happy.
So let's find out what ICP says. I'd like to know where I'm at. Plus, I feel like the fact that I was doing that daily dosing of trace elements and then I stopped, kind of correlates with the fact that my corals are great, but they didn't keep getting greater. It just kind of stopped. I saw phenomenal growth, and now I just have a happy reef. But had I kept going up, odds are I'd be having to trim regularly because they keep growing and growing and growing. Because you're kind of, like you said, you put your tank on speed, and it's reacting to the benefits. It's getting all the things it needs. So the fact that there are things probably lacking because it's been a few months, I'm going to assume, and maybe I can prove it, if I start resuming this dosing of all these crazy little trace elements that I don't have enough of, I might see some momentum pick up in my tank again.
I will say, when I was actually dedicated in dosing them daily, after a while, like the tank did look dang good. Like everything was colorful and had an extra like vibrance to it, and it looked really good.
Yeah.
Now I've been slacking at that and it hasn't happened in a while. But when I was doing it, there was like a noticeable I don't know. Vibrance is the only way I can explain it, right? Because it's not night and day, but this just has a little extra shine, little extra color pop. Like, I don't know.
People will say, I did a water change and my tank looks so much better afterwards. And usually. I always wonder how much of that is fact and how much is that you feel good about yourself and so you just think the tank looks good. Or maybe you just made the water less murky. Now it's actually a little more see-through because you took out some of the toxins, you took out some of the coloration in the water to put in some clear water.
Yeah.
I mean, there is that. But
do you do ozone or anything like that to clarify your water or carbon or anything?
No ozone,
no
UV, no chiller. I don't use your CO2 scrubbing stuff either.
Nothing.
Matter of fact, okay, this was funny, Devin, because of you. Yesterday I received a shipment of ice cream. Did you see my post? Did you see that post?
I didn't see your ice cream one. I saw your zombie pizza post.
I ordered a bunch of ice cream from Ohio.
Yeah.
I had this crazy inkling, I'm just going to do this. And I ordered 12 pints of ice cream and shipped it overnight from Ohio to Texas. Yesterday, Texas was 81 degrees. And I opened up my cooler, and all my ice cream was frozen hard. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And as I went down inside and got to the very bottom one, you could see all the dry ice. And I've received shipments of fish food that had no dry ice in them. They ship with dry ice. By the time I get it, it's just fish food that is cold.
Yeah.
But I never see the ice cubes. I haven't seen those ice cubes in forever. Probably not since high school. So here I am with bags of dry ice with huge warnings. Don't touch, don't lick, don't put in a drink.
If you throw in water and watch it be like...
I tore open a bag. I grabbed some tongs and I put one dry ice cube into a jar of water and let it just do the whole Halloween thing,
Yeah.
bubbling over. And I'm looking at all this white smoke and I'm filming it for a few seconds and I share it on Facebook. And I'm like, am I having a hard time breathing? Did I just soak up all the oxygen in the room? So I went to the apex, 10 minutes later. Did my pH drop? Because I just soaked up all the oxygen. The pH did not change at all. It was still on the rise. I'm like, okay, good. But I only did one ice cube and I took them all outside because I didn't want to take a chance with my reef, my dog, myself, with something dangerous happening.
Last time I had a pack of dry ice, I did the exact same thing. I'm just playing around, let it pull over. Yeah. I threw the rest in the freezer and then I went back later and my bags of it were gone. I was like,
Oh yeah, it doesn't,
I learned that.
According to the information that they sent, I think they said it's, maybe I'm wrong. I think it said negative 109 degrees.
Ooh, that's not a freezer.
So putting it in your freezer at whatever that is, probably
did nothing.
31.
Yeah.
It can't last, But yeah, I mean, I think I've done that too. I think in my teens, I put some in the freezer expecting to open it the next day and play with it some more and it was gone. And I was like, dang it, really?
I know. Dang it, that was fun. But it is cool stuff. They should use that for shipping fish food. I agree with that, actually.
Well, you know what the thing is that some of the shippers, like Rod's Food, Larry's Food, they use dry ice to ship their food all across the nation. And they said there's this massive shortage. I'm like, why is there a shortage? I don't understand. And they said because the government changed the laws about fracking. Apparently, the stuff they were, during the fracking process, which is a way of looking for oil, like spider webs into the earth, there is this byproduct that they removed, which was great for dry ice. And they were making dry ice because they had tons of it because they're so busy fracking. And when the government said, no more fracking, it's bad for the planet, we're green now, there was no more of this stuff that they needed. And apparently, whoever is now doing whatever kind of mining that they're doing, they were not being cautious with it. So in other words, America was, I'm just saying America because I don't know anything. Okay, so I could be wrong. But anyway, the way I interpreted the information was America was doing this a certain way and it benefited the dry ice companies and it was very clean and safe and it wasn't dangerous at all, even though the government says shut it down. Now, whoever's doing it, let's just say, let's pick a country we hate, Portugal. Portugal's doing it badly and dirty, and they're hurting the environment. I was like, oh, are you kidding me? And we don't have dry ice. So we don't have dry ice, and apparently some other country, whoever they are, quote unquote Portugal, is causing this problem, or China, whoever. It was just a weird thing. I was like, wow. So yeah, these guys are worried about having ice. And I'm like, I just bought ice cream from a company that ships ice cream everywhere. Those people need dry ice more than the fish food guys, right?
Well,
so
ice cream treat or feeding our creatures? I don't know which one's more important.
Well, yeah, I agree, but ice cream is in every supermarket. And it has to go everywhere. And it has to be shipped. And you think about ice cream that comes on any kind of refrigerator truck that drives across the nation. It has to be rock hard when it gets there because no one wants to get a container of liquid soup that you're trying to re-solidify. So.
This is totally off topic, but I remember
all of it was.
Yeah, we're off topic. But I remember it was like Breyers or I don't know what brand. It was one of the brands. There's the extra scoop and it was in the sink or something. And the next day it was still there. I'm like, that's not real. This is not real ice cream. I don't remember what brand it was, but it was it a little bit melted, but it was still a glob of some synthetic form of ice cream.
I went to the supermarket and I bought some ice cream about 6 months ago. They had just done some work on the store and I opened the thing, I got my ice cream, I went to the register probably 10 minutes later, and as I picked it up, I was like, it's weird. Container feels soft and felt kind of light, like it was empty. I was like, okay, here you go. And they put it through the little conveyor belt and they rung me up, charged me. I went home and I come home with groceries. What is the first thing you do? You eat your ice cream. So I open the lid and it's liquid. I'm like, oh, okay. So I got back in my car with my liquid ice cream and I went back and I said, hey, I need to trade you one that's good. And they said, yeah, no problem. Just go back there. And I went back there and every container, the entire cooler was messing up and all the ice cream was ruined. And I said, you need to actually remove it all or put a sign up or lock the door or whatever you got to do because none of your ice cream is any good. Something bad happened. Thank you for telling us. and they had to pull it all. It
Oh,
actually got
dang.
ruined.
Crazy. I
Happens.
wonder if you could refreeze it. But anyways, okay. Back
No,
to
you can't. That's the thing. You
Really?
can't refreeze
One and
it.
done?
Yeah.
Dang. What do you have an
Now
ice cream
this
machine?
ice cream, since we didn't mention who I used, it's Graders, and it's according to them, it's handmade, which is amazing. In this day and age, they say they hand make 2.5 gallons at a time. They
So
literally have a guy in the back scraping it in the French ice cream maker system. They put in their chunks and they do their thing, and each one is handmade.
So in the chat, JCS Reefing, why is Mark getting ice cream when we have Bluebell's? The question. And then Tyler goes, it might be Grader's ice cream. Then it's worth it.
It's Grader's ice cream. That's exactly who it is. So listen, here's the thing. I have not found one brand of any ice cream on the planet that makes good Rocky Road. And I don't know why. I've tried Bluebell. I've tried everything. Anytime I see a Rocky Road, like, oh, let me try that one. Always disappointed. I don't know who made the one I had when I was a kid that was fantastic, but ever since it's garbage. So, and now like Bluebell and all that stuff's like $8 for half a gallon, which is insane. It's ice cream, okay? It should not be this expensive.
Yeah.
So I ordered Graders. Well, I got 12 pints and they were $13 each shipped to my door. But these are flavors I could not get in my area. The one I like the most from Graders is available at Kroger. So when I did this 12-pack, I ordered everything I could not get because I can go to Kroger's and get the one I love the most.
Yeah.
Which is their black raspberry chocolate chunk. It's amazing.
That's how you also get dry ice to play with.
Yes, I got to play with some dry ice. It really was cool. And, I spent a lot of money. Yes, that shipment cost me $150 to my door. And somebody says, you literally paid to have ice cream shipped to your door? I said, the overnight shipping was $30. And he said, you pay more in shipping for a frag. So I guess technically I can't judge you. And I was like, yeah, and plus I've never done this. It was the first time I wanted to try it. And I had a great success story. I mean, those things were rock hard. A few hours later, I tried to put a spoon. I could not even carve the top layer. I was like, it's still super hard. It was that well frozen through the trip. I was really impressed with that. I called him up and I said, you guys did a fantastic job. And the guy was so surprised because I guess everyone calls to complain. I said, no, thank you for doing a good job. And the guy was kind of laughing. I said, please tell your friends in the building, that you guys did a good job.
Yeah, it's probably like the first time they've ever had compliments on their shipping and their ice cream.
It's actually an important thing that we should do from time to time because we're always so quick to jump at when things go wrong.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like we do enough thank you for when things go well. And I
That's
think
fair.
We should do that.
I agree. I like your good vibes. Hey, this cracked me up. Dan, I love your over-the-topness. I bought an Italian gelato machine for the office kitchen.
Ooh.
We need to come visit.
That sounds like a great idea.
Okay, I have to go back to a reefing question from a few minutes ago. I already lost it. My chat scrolled past.
Oh, no, it's gone.
Justin, I have a newly set up Nano 24 gallons and about 17 gallons tomorrow, 2 months old, low nutrient system, dosing Red Seas, calcium mag. Should I do an ICP test now or wait? You do not need an ICP test.
Not yet.
Even ever. I mean,
Ever?
It's only 24 gallons. It's only 24 gallons. That $50 that you'd spend on it, buy a box of salt and just do regular water changes, and honestly, you'll be fine for a long, long time. I still question if it's worth it on a small tank because it's so cheap and efficient to just do a big water change and then everything's reset. You don't have to worry about it. You're like, oh, I was low on something. It's been replaced. I have too much of something. It's all gone now.
If someone wanted to do the Andre's Moonshiner system,
yes.
I wonder if anyone's done it in a Nano. Because he has a lot of followers, and I don't know what size tanks they keep. But
True.
I wonder if there's anyone out there with like some insane 6-gallon crazy SBS tank.
Yeah.
With like only the $1,000 frag, and it looks insane, because he's dosing, like you said, wormwood or witch hazel or whatever it is that Andre says to use, But I guarantee you Andre makes some ICP test no matter what size the tank is.
Yeah, so I don't know. Personally, it's you can spend $50 on a box of salt and you can spend $50 on an ICP test, right?
Yeah.
And that tells you the levels. And on a big tank, it makes sense because you need a lot of salt. But on a Nano, you could just do a water change for so cheap and reset it back to like a happy standard. So providing your salt's not good, but average good salt. if you got something contaminating your system, do a water change. Boom, it's gone, right? Especially do a big one. You're deficient on something, do water change. It's there. It's so easy on a little tank. Like, I had a 20-gallon Red Sea tank back in the day, and I did like a 5-gallon. I did like a 1 bucket water change every weekish, so Slack or some weeks. That tank was like perfect. I never do anything. It was like the easiest tank of my life because it basically had 100% water change a month. And to do a 5-gallon 1 bucket water change took like a couple minutes. So it was like so quick and easy. So then to me, it doesn't make sense to do it.
Well, I don't disagree with you because the fact is that, well, here's the thing. Here's the bottom line. This is the simplest way to decide if you need to do it. If your tank is doing well, you don't need it. Unless you want to do the baseline measurement Devin mentioned earlier, just for the fun of knowing where everything was great one day. And then if things are really crappy, you could do another test and kind of compare the two and say, aha, I haven't dosed iodine in 9 months. I haven't done this. I completely depleted this. Okay, fair enough. Now I know what's wrong. I can add those things. Because like when my tank was going through its crisis, it was bad. I mean, it was so bad that I lost pretty much 50% of my corals.
Yeah.
But the crazy part was the other half of the tank was completely unfazed and happy. And I had to actually say the words out loud. You know how people stand, you see this in movies. They talk into the mirror. I'm a good person. I love other people. I'm going to put my first footstep out today, and I'm going to work hard to be a very helpful member. What are they doing? The self-affirmation, right?
Yeah.
Well, I was basically saying, yes, Mark, your tank has lost a bunch of corals, but there's half of them still there. All your fish are still there. You're okay. So let's just figure out what's wrong and fix it. And so I did my ICP test. I found out what was missing. I literally put in no more water changes. I only added potassium for 3 weeks, and the whole tank improved.
Really?
And then I planted new corals. Yeah. Huh. That was it. It was just get the potassium back to 400.
Just potassium deficiency is what did it. Dang, that's crazy.
That's all I did. Yep, it was the one thing. It took. I had like Sunset Monteport in 5 places in the tank: up high, in the middle, down low, under a Duncan, and all of them at the same time just closed up and were dying. I was like, how on earth? This is a systematic problem. I mean, it's the whole thing. It has nothing to do with par, has nothing to do with neighbors, has nothing to do with flow, because it's everywhere. This one coral has gone. And there was a bunch of other stuff I lost, but it was all in the SPS family. And I was just like, what is happening? Why is everything else okay? And then when I finally found out it was wrong, I literally spent the time of, the first bottle of potassium that came in was 1,000 milliliters, right? A liter.
Yeah.
And I put in half a liter one day and half a liter the next. And that was the first day. And then I ordered another bottle because I ran out. And this time I put in, I guess is it a deciliter? What is 10 milliliter, or what's 100 milliliters? Is that a deciliter? Your metric.
1,000 milliliters a liter. I don't know what 100 is. 0.1 liters?
I think 100 is a deciliter. I think it's a part of a liter.
I've never heard that.
I put in 2 deciliters. Well, you're supposed to know the metric system. You're Canadian.
I think you're making it up.
So anyway, I put in 200 milliliters a day for 5 days and wiped out that bottle. Then I ordered a third bottle. Is that right?
No, a decameter equals 10 meters.
No, a decimeter. D-E-C-I
That's what Google's
meter.
Oh, look at that. Equals 1/10 of a meter. That'd be 10 centimeters.
Well,
no, you're different.
We're talking about liters.
Deciliter. That's what I put in?
DECI liter. Anyway, on the third bottle, I put in 100 milliliters a day, which I think is 1 deciliter, for 10 days. And then at that point, my tank was measuring 400, and I was good. And everything that was upset turned around, started improving. That, anything that was surviving turned around and improved. Everything that didn't care still didn't care. All the fish were still completely happy. But that was the solution, was literally pour in the one missing element, which was actually kind of fascinating. Because with reef tanks, where I was like, oh, there's nuances, and there's so many things to take into consideration. And it could be your UV is doing this with your metal halide, which is doing something with your kalkwasser dosing and your evaporation rate. Like, no, I was missing potassium. I put in potassium. The tank got better.
Yeah. No, that's pretty solid. Like, one element. Okay. Again, 400 gallons, big tank. Definitely, I think there's a lot more importance on big systems, for sure.
Yeah. No, I agree. So, like, if you have a small tank and everything's going, this is the thing, and I tell this to people all the time. There was a guy that called me up years ago, and he said, hey, Mark, I saw this really cool thing. It's made in Germany, and it takes nitrate out of the water, and it's $500. I think I want to order it. What do you think? And I said, well, send me a link. So he gave me the link. I looked at it, and it was something new I'd not seen before. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said to him, well, what are your nitrates? He says, well, they're 0. I was like,
what are you removing?
then why do you need this? And you could hear the quietness on the other end of the phone. And then he said, you just saved me $500. And I just kind of laughed and said, good, because you don't need it just because it exists. If you need it, it's because it's a need. There's a problem.
He hasn't bought a new toy in a while.
But no, he literally wanted to buy it because he heard it was great. He read it in a magazine, whatever, and he thought, I need this thing. I was like, what are your numbers? He goes, well, they're fine. I was like, then you don't need it at all. So do you need an ICP test with a small nano tank? Maybe not. Maybe you do. It really comes down to how is your tank doing? How is your livestock? If everything looks good, keep going. If it's looking bad, do a water change. If it's still not doing well, if it's just not getting rolling, if it's just kind of stagnant and corals just aren't doing anything, then maybe, why not? Do an ICP. Maybe there's something glaringly obvious that you just completely can't see with your own test kits.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, I'm going to go back to what I've told my audience for the last 4 years in a row, every single Saturday, water test Saturday. Test your water every single week.
Solid advice.
A lot of people are not testing nearly enough. And they admit it. They always I haven't tested this in forever. And now everything was fine, but today I lost a fish and I don't know why. I'm like, what are your results? I don't know. I measured like 3 months ago. I'm like, okay, well.
Okay, so here's a question. Since I know you have a Trident, do you still test your water even though you have an auto tester?
Yes. Yep. I use the Trident to look. And let me tell you something about the Trident that I like a lot.
Yes.
Alkalinity is my thing. That is the one thing I always have to deal with. It varies my tank. Mm-hmm. And the Trident tells me when the alkalinity is dipping. I get a notification on my phone. I'm like, oh, and I go handle it before my reef crashes. Mm-hmm. And that's why I never have had a crash, because I always handle it before it can get to that point. Yep. So I get a notification, it's a little low. I'm like, I don't even wait 6 hours for the next test. I mix up some sodium or some soda ash with some RO water. I pour it in the tank and bring it up now so I don't get notifications for the next 6 hours. And I do a quick little alkalinity test. And I know that I've brought it back to like 8.5, 8.6.
Thank you for the reminder. I am low on this tank a little bit.
It's important. It's the number
on that note, these little space saver containers are great. I pre-mix like alkalinity, calcium magnets, like boop, and just dump them in when I need it.
How much does it hold?
Gallon and a half or gallon and a quarter, something like that.
Nice. No, that's awesome.
There you go.
So but I mean, if everything's working perfectly, alkaline just stays stable. But when it starts to dip, I get a notification up to 4 times a day getting told where you're at, which I love. And I can just quickly handle it, or I can go inspect and say, oh, the calcium reactor is not taking in the water like it should. This is clogged, or there's a worm in the tube, or whatever the stupid thing on the Versa pump is worn out. I have to replace it. No, I just replace it. Yeah. And then everything's right back on track. And I love that. So, I mean, that part's been actually a huge asset. I find that the Trident's a little finicky. Mm-hmm. It's one of those things you kind of have to babysit a little bit. And I've got to go install 3 of them for a client next week. And I'm like, man, I want him to like it, but I also want him to understand he might have to deal with it. He might have to.
What have you found? I honestly haven't had any fiddly with mine. It's just did its thing.
Well, I haven't had to ever take one apart. I mean, I've never done that. I see people post about it. I had to take the cover off and everything. Like, really? And they're like, look, the tube came off. I'm like, how is your tube coming loose? It's weird to me, Yeah. So, but anyway, it's a great device. I buy the reagents. I change them out as needed. I let the numbers happen. But I like to get my test kits out and verify. And I use a smart stir. I think without the smart stir, I'd be less of a tester. And I'd tell everyone on my channel, buy the smart stir. And I wish all 4,000 viewers would just buy a smart stir that day, and I could sell 4,000.
That's the little tiny white one that you put the vial in?
Yes.
I just use my big one.
Yeah. Oh man, that little one is fantastic. I think I charge it like every 3 months. It lasts forever on the charge.
That's good.
It's insane. And I never lose the bead. The mixing bead is very important.
Yeah.
Theirs is really small. It looks like a grain of rice, where all the ones you get like Amazon or whatever, they're like these big giant things that rattle away in there. I like that little tiny one, and I carry the smart stir and the replacement beads for my customers. But it just, you're not shaking a vial. You're not doing this
100%.
Add a drop shake. I hate that. So I just put it in there, and I turn it on, and I just drip, 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 and I watch the color change. Like, boom, I got my answer.
No, that's Yeah, 100% way to go. Like, I don't have the fancy Smart Stir. I just use my big one with a little tiny pill in my bottle, but I've been doing that for years just because it's so
Yeah.
much quicker. Or even
Oh, it's
mixing
awesome.
reagent, same thing, just way, way, way easier.
And if you think about it, you're doing the test the same way every time, which gives you some continuity
Yep.
in how you're doing your test. Because if you don't, like, I see people say, oh, when you're testing nitrate, if you're not shaking the hell out of that vial, you're not getting the right number. And it's like, well, do you shake the hell out of it every
You
single
stir
time?
the hell out of it every time.
It's like, but if you have the spinning bead, it is the right speed every single time. You're consistent in how you use the kit.
Yeah, 100% agree. And then it's just down to if you're doing like consistent, in your syringe and consistent drops,
Right.
but you're that one step closer.
Yes.
All right. All right, buddy. What are we at? 2 hours. No, an hour and a half. An hour and a half. That was pretty good.
It felt like 15 minutes.
I know. Just
We should start the topic.
Ice cream.
Let's
that's
talk
good.
about fire pits.
Is your slow motion fire pit?
Oh, my fire. You have to buy slow motion wood. It's really hard to find.
Yeah, I super rare.
Burn slowly. It's awesome.
Special shipping, dry ice, everything. A lot of work.
No, I'm just going to throw this out there to all the ReefDudes family. You guys have to watch my new video I'm going to release about the fire pit. It has nothing to do with reef keeping. I'm putting it on a reef keeping channel. And, I've talked with Devin about this in the past. And how do you, leak your cool videos? He goes, oh, people hate that. So I just put it at the end of my video. I'm like, yeah, this is like a 24-minute video. There's not going to be on the end of a video.
But
I
do
might
that
put
sometimes.
4 minutes of reef at the end of the fire pit video just to make them get to that point.
That's funny. 20 minutes of fire pit and then like 2 minutes of reefing content.
Just so the reef at the end, just let it run, and then just go to black screen. That might be what I do. Yeah.
That you should. It'd be funny. It's just like the secret ending for the hardcores.
Yeah, because people are getting mad. I did one thing about Comic-Con, and people. It was like the most thumbs down video I've ever shared on my channel. Oh my god, everyone's so mad at me. I'm like, this was so interesting. How on earth did you not like this?
I enjoyed it actually. I thought it was interesting.
Really cool. They were showing how they changed someone with all the makeup to make them look like a hobbit or whatever.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
I was like, this is so neat. And I stood there holding the phone, filming this. Then I edited it all down and I uploaded. I had so much hate. And I was like, wow, you guys really only want to hear about reefs no matter what.
Yeah.
Like, all right. So it's made me a little gun shy, but now I'm like, you know what? It's my channel. Get to put what I want on my channel. And I have been working on this fire pit on and off for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like I built it in a day and here's my video. This was a whole thing with me deciding, and then I cut out stuff on my CNC machine for my fire pit, which is really cool that no one else can do.
That is awesome.
And it's working. It's smokeless. It's amazing.
That is nice.
I love it, and I cannot wait to share it because there's like 8 or 10 really good videos on YouTube about smokeless fire pits. I watched them all. I watched them all to learn from everyone.
Yeah.
This one guy, Devin, you would have loved him. This one guy was all sciencey, and he said, all right, so we're going to make this a certain way. And then he did a test, and he had something that looked like a marshmallow on the end of a stick, and he lit it on fire, and all this smoke came off of it. It was a smoke bomb marshmallow. And he held it in the fire pit, and he showed how the air moved through.
Oh, interesting.
And then he said, all right, now we're going to drill this size holes over here. And he got a different color marshmallow. He had a different smoke. It was really cool. And he held it up like by the vent at the bottom. And he showed the air go in, and he showed the smoke coming out the holes. And he says, now I'm going to make bigger holes. And we're going to see if it works the same or if the holes are too large. So he's showing convection. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is making this so sciencey. I love every minute of it. And I watched the whole thing. And I mean, I don't have the smoke bomb things he had, but I have been putting firewood in there. And I did my first test last night. And while there was some smoke, it was not like the billowing thing where you're constantly trying to stand on the other side of the fire pit to get away from it. Like
circle around as the wind shifts, and you just keep doing musical
you're always
chairs.
moving. No, it was not bad like that at all. And nice. I have 4 chairs around my thing, like 12, 3, 6, and 9, like a clock. And I went to each chair to see if there was a bad spot. Yeah. And really, there wasn't. It was. Nice. It's remarkable. It actually works the way it's supposed to, and it looks so good. And I've never made one before, so I'm actually really, really proud of myself.
Nice work. And I will watch your video.
I kept going outside and staring at it. I was like, man, I built that. And I've built lots of stuff in my life, but I'm like all fixated on how I made a fire pit, which is not a really important thing for most people. But I'm a guy that doesn't even have a fireplace. So if I want to burn something, I need a fire pit.
That's fair.
So I went ahead and I did that. I got me the ingredients. I watched my YouTube. I did my homework. I did some hard math. I did some CNC coding. I cut out foam on a CNC machine. I mixed my own concrete. I did mortar. I put twinkle lights on it. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah. That's awesome. I made one many years ago, but I did natural gas for mine just so I didn't have to like worry about fuels and stuff.
My friend wanted that. She says, just get a gas one. Just be done. Just turn on, enjoy the fire, turn off. I was like, no, I need to smell the wood burning. I need to be poking at the ashes. And
the crackle's nice too. You know.
I want the crackle. I want to see the glowing embers. I want to blow on it and make it turn into a flame again. I want to watch the flames dancing. Ugh, I am a huge pyromaniac.
That's good times.
And now it's like I have nothing to do with my life but just sit in the backyard and watch fire dance. It's like I don't even know what I used to do, and it's only been like one day, and I'm like, all I want to do is sit out there. I'm like, why do I have to be on this live stream? I could be out there with my fire pit right now.
So if anyone just joined, you want to learn about ICP testing, rewind this video, and if you want to learn how to build a smokeless fire pit, watch Mark's channel in the next day or two.
Yeah, in a couple of days. Yeah, because I did something that most people don't do. They do the video. They say, look, I built it, and it hits end. I'm showing how it works, which I think is important. I feel like, that was the most important part in like these videos. There'll be like 4 seconds at the end. I'm like, did it really work? I mean, you're running the credits. You got the extra video sitting on top. You can't even see if there's smoke or not. So yeah, I sat out there for a couple hours filming, 5-second bursts, like here we are in 2 hours.
Nice. That's awesome. I will watch it for you. Okay. This is
I
a
do
legit
need the view.
This is I will help you out. This is a legit reefing question. Doghouse Reefer. I have a question. Is it necessary to remove the magnetic pill from the stir of the Hanukkah vest before running the test? I would remove it, but wondering if you could leave it in. Their colorimeters, I don't actually know how far up the meter it is. If it's above the pill, I'm sure you're fine. But if it's below it, then I don't know. Honestly, do your test twice. Do one with it in there and one with it out and see if you get the same reading. Then you'll know.
I don't understand the question.
If you're using the magnetic pill, right, your stirrer, but in a Hanukkah vet, like a digital colorimeter. Like, do you need to remove it before
eggs.
Yeah.
So he's saying put it in. No, the light's up high. So
okay.
You could definitely do the stir process. I bet you could totally do that, and then throw the lid on there and wipe it down to get the fingerprints off the glass. Drop it in, because there's no way it's going to measure anything to do with that vial down below. Yeah. The Trident uses a bead in the bottom of its cuvette. Yep. And it measures above the bead. It doesn't care about the bead. Yeah,
it just depends, right? Like if the thing's low, then it's probably in the middle, but it depends where it is, right? So
I think the light's up pretty high up. I don't think it's anywhere near that bottom part.
I don't have any in reach there.
Devin's right. It's like, just do it twice. Yeah.
Get your premix bottle and take a second cuvette with just tank water, and then you could do a super quick test. Do one with it. Take a little second magnet and fish it out, and do it again and see the same reading.
You say a second magnet, but you can just use the twist tie off a loaf of bread.
Oh, that works too.
The wire. And that's what comes with those smart stirrers. They come with this weird wire. I was like, what is this for? It's so you can put it in the vial and take the bead out. I'm like, oh, that's actually kind of smart.
Oh, I usually use a magnet on the edge of the container, go bloop, and just like lure it up.
Like a cleaning magnet. That's smart too.
Like any magnet. I have magnets everywhere, but just something on the edge. And... Yep.
No, I'm saying like a clean magnet, because we use that to bring another piece of, like when you lose half of your feeding clip, you're grabbing your cleaning magnet, you're trying to catch it on the glass to get it up near the surface.
I know. You gotta do what you gotta do. We're good improvisers in reefing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
So Devin, you didn't show your tank. I didn't show my tank. This is the ultimate live stream. No one actually knows if our stuff's alive or not.
Yeah, that's fair. There's weekly videos though. They can find out if they really want.
That's fair.
All right. All right. I hear the child screaming in the background, so I should probably.
And my dog wants to be walked really badly.
Yeah. Mark, thank you for joining me today. Thanks everyone for hanging out and listening about ICP testing ice cream and fire pits. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's talk. You know where to go for your fire pit content, and be sure to come back next week for another random reefing topic. All right, guys.
Thanks for having me.